Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Business Technical Fundamental series. In this video, we will be discussing upgrading to Office 365 Business, the desktop Office applications included with Microsoft 365 Business. We'll be discussing 4 different ways of deploying Office 365 Business to Windows devices, including some that rely on cloud technologies and others that can leverage existing on-prem infrastructure. These ways are through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, a customized installation through Microsoft Intune, using the Office 365 deployment toolkit, as well as doing PowerShell-based deployments with Microsoft Intune. The easiest way to deploy Office 365 Business is via the Microsoft 365 Business Admin Center. In order to use this approach, you will need to uninstall non-click-to-run versions of Office. So if you have an Office version that was a traditional MSI-based install, it will need to be removed before this installation can proceed. With this option, you don't get any deployment customization capabilities. Instead, you get a 32-bit install delivered from the cloud via Microsoft's content distribution network. The only real options that we get for deployment here are either to install it or to uninstall it, and what groups of users that we want to target. Once you move across to Intune, you can start getting more control over several elements, and rather than going through all of them, we will focus on a couple of the key capabilities. One of the recent additions that is exposed through this option is the ability to remove MSI-based installations before installing the click-to-run version. This is going to be very beneficial in environments where the customer is moving away from legacy versions of Office. You also get the ability to choose 32-bit or 64-bit installations, the ability to add additional languages, control over which apps in the suite are installed, as well as changing the update channel that gets applied. The Office deployment tool is a very small download and allows the Office installation files to be downloaded to a centralized location, which can then be used as a distribution point for wider deployment. For organizations that need to deploy Office 365 Business to a large number of devices in a centralized network, this can save large amounts of time. The list of customizations that can be included with the provided XML configuration file is more extensive than the cloud-based deployment, as it takes into account additional elements that may be required in on-prem deployments. If you do use this method for deployment, it's recommended that you then switch the configuration to allow clients to pull updates from the internet rather than an internal network location. This will ensure that clients will receive the necessary updates in a timely manner. Installing apps via PowerShell gives Microsoft 365 Business immense flexibility in leveraging existing on-prem infrastructure for legacy app deployment. But in this case, we're also going to be using it potentially for deploying Office 365. So the example here is that we could write a PowerShell script that leverages the offline installer that we mentioned in that last slide, along with a customized XML file for deployment. Once we know that all of the client devices are running Office 365 Business, we could easily switch to using the Microsoft 365 Business or Intune policies to manage those installations in an ongoing cloud-based manner. In this demonstration, we will look at the Microsoft 365 Business Admin Center, Intune's Office capabilities, and finally the Office deployment tool. Starting off in the Device Actions tile in the Microsoft 365 Business Admin Center, you'll see that we've got Manage Office Deployment. And what's important to note with this is that all we really can do here is either deploy Office or uninstall Office from selected groups of users in the organization. So as mentioned in the presentation, the things that it's doing here, they've made some default decisions for you, such as installing 32-bit Office, installing all of the applications, for example, just so that it's an easier way to get Office deployed in a way that's going to suit most environments. Once you do start needing something more complex than that, we can move across to Intune. And when we start drilling into Intune and Intune's mobile apps capabilities, we can get the apps listing and we can choose to do a new Office deployment from here. So what you'll notice here is that we've actually got Office split out as a separate deployment type. So for Office 365 Suite on top of Windows 10, what this will do is a click-to-run installation across the internet. So using Microsoft's content distribution network. So as we take a look at this, what you'll see is we could go through. We might decide that we don't actually need all of the apps exposed, but in this case, we'll say all of them because it's like we know that the users are going to be using them. if we take a look at the app suite information, here's where we can start looking at some of the details around what do we actually want to call this. So if we're doing some customizations, we may want to give it a few more details to make sure that it's a naming scheme that makes sense. Do we want to put it into the company portal? And obviously productivity would be the category that we'd put it into. And the final thing that we can change down here is under the app suite settings. This is where we get to choose 32-bit versus 64-bit. What type of release cycle do we want to subscribe to? So we could do monthly or monthly targeted. So they would normally be the ones that I'd be recommending: monthly for most users, monthly targeted for some of the people that you effectively want acting as the canaries in the coal mines. So the people who get updates a little bit earlier than everyone else, just to make sure that they can let you know, if there are any issues that get introduced, so that you can see what the problems are. Now, one of the important things that you'll see in here now is this option here: remove other versions of Office, so in brackets MSI, from end user devices. So if you are in an environment where you do need to manually uninstall Office, which the Microsoft 365 Business Admin Center would require from you, this is something that could actually save you a lot of time. Now, we do want to go through and automatically accept the app end user license, and we don't want to enable the shared computer activation because that's not something that Microsoft 365 Business supports. Now, just something that I want to quickly cover off here, in case you have noticed it on screen, is it's talking about Office 365 Pro Plus. Now, what really happens here is effectively you get the same bits deployed down to the machine when you do this deployment. It's actually the license type that it detects is assigned to the user that determines what Office functionality and what Office version actually lights up. So don't really worry about it saying Office 365 Pro Plus here. Really what it's doing, it's deploying the Office apps and then determining what capabilities you're actually licensed for. So you don't really need to worry about that. The next thing that we'll take a quick look at here is the Office deployment tool. So I mentioned that this is a small download. It's 2.6 meg in size, so it's something that I think we can all sort of say is a very manageable download, regardless of what our customized speed is. And what we get from this is we get the ability to go through, and inside of that download, we've got two files. We've got a configuration XML file and a setup.exe file. So if we take a look at the configuration XML file first, and I'll just open that up with Notepad. It's probably the easiest way for us to read what's inside of that. And what you'll see here is we've got the configuration settings. So you'll notice here that it says Office 365 Pro Plus Retail. Well, we don't really need to change that, but we can if we want to, because it's the license that it determines the user actually has when it goes online to activate that will determine what functionality you get. But next I'll show you what we can do to address that. And other things I mentioned, that we could go through and add additional capabilities in. So if we did have Visio Online capabilities, if we did have project licenses through our online licensing program as well, we could deploy those through here if we really wanted to. Now, once we start getting down to these areas, this is where you'll start seeing some important pieces. So enabling updates equals true. Yes, we definitely want updates. Monthly channel, which aligns with what we just spoke about. The display level for installation, well, we want that as none because we don't want users to really see what to see what it is, to give an answer or an option for them to cancel out accidentally. Accept EULA equals true, again, just something to simplify the installation process, and then the process of auto activation. Now, some of the things that we can do inside of here is once we can sort of see that everything's working the way we want, we can start doing things like telling it what the download location is that we want it to go to. So we could start putting in like a backslash server share type and then folder structure for where we want those downloaded files to go to, so that we could do a download to a network location, and then we could start creating versions of this that were actually pointing to that network installation side. So that way we can go through and start pulling that download across from those locations, and we can get very fast network-based installations from that centralized location if required. But if it's an organization that doesn't have any kind of infrastructure left, so if it's something where it's just some machines that are Azure Active Directory joined, there's no SMB file share on the network, for example, I'd really just stick to using the cloud-based capabilities. Now, a couple more things we can take a look at in here. If we just jump out to a command prompt and take a look at what happens when we run setup.exe, what you'll see here is we've got several switches that we can use. So we won't go through all of them. Really, the two important ones are setup.exe download and setup.exe configure. So what you'll see here is that it downloads files to create an Office installation source. So it's just downloading the current pieces that are available from the content distribution network. So this means it will just go through, it won't install it onto the device, it will just put it into the location that you specify in the XML file. When we take a look at configure, well, this is actually a multi-purpose switch because it adds, removes, or configures an Office installation. So if there's no Office installation, we could actually use this to go through and, with the configure, that would do the installation for us. Or if we realized we got something wrong in the XML file that we've been testing, we could go through and run configure again against what's there, and it won't need to go through and reinstall what's already been installed. It will only need to go through and change what it is that you've changed. Now again, there are a lot of different things that we can add into that configuration XML file, even if there are specific builds. So if you want to go to a particular month's update to test something out, for example, that's something that can be very easily done with those configuration XML files that you'll end up creating if you do go down this path. Now, the final thing that we can take a look at in here is once we jump back to the browser here, you'll see here I've just got this page open so that you can have a search for it so you can find it, but the product IDs that are supported by the Office deployment tool for click to run. Now what I'm really showing you in this one, and it's something that's pretty easy to figure out anyway, but what you'll see here is that it's telling you, if you just want to make things a bit easier and make sure that there's no confusion around what's getting deployed, when we're using the Office deployment tool, instead of that Office 365 Pro Plus Retail reference we saw, if we just replace that with Office 365 Business Retail, that will actually do just a regular install of Office 365 Business. So even if someone tries to use it without activating it, well, until it starts going into reduced functionality mode, it's just going to be offering the Office 365 Business capabilities. Now, you can see that there are quite a few different things that we can go through, even just with the different products that we want to push out. But yeah, I've just put this link in here in case you are looking for it and you just want to keep things simpler. Maybe it's just to make the different XML files easier to identify if you are using them for different sizes of customers. The different deployment options provided give you an idea of the flexibility you have to deploy Office, taking into account bandwidth-restricted scenarios that may otherwise be problematic. If possible, use the deployment options that are built into the Microsoft 365 Business Admin Console, but the other approaches are all tried and tested approaches, but they may introduce some complexity into your environment.